Thick descriptions disrupts traditional educational methods. And why do we do that? Because we want to help humans thrive where they are, building better communities. One way that we do that is the Elephant in the Room Unboxed, where we give our audience members the tools and the resources to have those uncomfortable conversations and do it in a humane and anthropological way. We're doing this in partnership with Respect Diversity, another organization that is committed to doing the work with us. Each episode will have a different host and a different guest talking about uncomfortable conversations or uncomfortable topics and giving you the resources of how to navigate them. Let's get uncomfortable.
Hello, and welcome to Elephant in the Room Unboxed. My name is Veda Pai, and I am a graduate student at the University of Oklahoma, as well as a Thick Descriptions interviewer. Today, our guest is Rena Cook. Rena is the founder of Vocal Authority, where her organization offers workshops, online training, and a course called My Essential Vocal Warm-Up. These programs use Rena's extensive experience in theater and public speaking to help her clients present the best version of themselves. Overall, Rena helps foster confidence in those who may feel that they are not taken seriously because of their lack of assertiveness. As a budding anthropologist, I always find it fascinating to understand how confidence and belief in your expertise can assist one in discussing different topics. Through asserting that you have the right to a discussion, difficult topics such as race, white privilege, politics, and systematic oppression can truly be unpacked. Rena's work has given me an insight into how much confidence in public speaking can affect one's positionality in society, especially when one's identity is historically marginalized. First, Rena, let's just give some background into how you created Vocal Authority and how you got started in this work.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to talk with you. It's always a pleasure to talk about one's passions. So the question was, I got so excited talking to you that I forgot the question. The question is how I came to form a Vocal Authority. I've trained actors my entire adult life. I started life as a singer, actor, dancer, but quickly found that my purpose in this world was to teach. And so my passion was theater, my purpose was teaching. So I taught theater. About a decade ago, I started getting a tug on my heart that I needed to share the skill set, share what it is I did for actors with anybody who needs to speak with confidence, with authority, with authenticity, who want to change hearts and minds. So that's my goal now with Vocal Authority, is to spread the techniques. It's only partly a mindset. Mostly it's muscle memory. What does my body need to do to project a clear and confident voice and a general confidence of personality?
I mean, I totally understand that. I did theater throughout high school.
Oh my gosh,
yes,
how
I'm
fun.
a huge theater nerd, secretly. So I really understand the passion behind the theater training that you have and how that's translated into your work, because I find that, you know, if I hadn't been in theater, I don't think my public speaking and my nature of carrying myself when presenting my passions would have been what it is today.
Absolutely. I mean, I find that all the time. People say, what do you do with a degree in theater? You do anything with a degree in theater. My former students are attorneys, teachers, CEOs. The ability to stand in front of people and say your truth, to talk about your story is a totally invaluable skill and will put you at the top of the heap way before others who haven't had that training.
No, I totally understand that. And it's so interesting. My parents always kind of tease me a little bit for being that theater nerd, but it's so interesting that they use those tactics of theater in their everyday lives when they're presenting to their company or presenting to, you know, somebody they're trying to have a conversation for the first time with. It's so fascinating. And I'm like, you're using these tactics of overcoming the stage fright and really harnessing your physical power into either persuading someone or, discussing something that you were particularly passionate about. But when I was, doing all this research on you, I was just like, oh, I totally connect with her work. And it's just so interesting to hear. So The question I always really like to ask my guests when I have this podcast is, what values do you lead with? Or do you lead with values at all? Because, some people think about values differently.
I definitely lead with values. Part of the thing that is always front in my mind is that everyone deserves to be heard. And that's a high value for me, giving everyone permission to speak their truth, to speak what's on their heart, to be heard, to be listened to be empathized with and understood. And secondly, I lead, I hope, with generosity and compassion. I feel compelled to share my work with anyone, regardless of whether or not they can pay me. Now, I know that's dangerous to say out loud because people will then say, oh, she'll do this work for free. But there are many, many people that I interact with, women in recovery, for example, women running for public office. I offer my work for free because they need it and cannot pay. There are other people who can pay, and that's what supports me to do the give back work that I feel so strongly compelled to do. So I think those are the primary values that I lead with.
I love that. I've been using a term called constructive compassion recently.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, where I work in reproductive politics and reproductive justice, and oftentimes a lot of those topics are very contested, which, to be fair, there's a lot of opinions regarding a lot of different stuff.
Absolutely.
So, even if I might not agree with how somebody's going about it, I always try to lean into the fact that compassion needs to be led with when we're discussing specifically reproductive politics, reproductive justice, because the decisions and the conversations we have regarding one's body and one's livelihood as a family has drastic consequences for, their future as a person. So when we have these really detrimental conversations and it's not necessarily taken with the seriousness or the compassion and, contextual kindness that's required, it can be really, really, detrimental.
That's so important. What you're saying is I am very opinionated. I have very strong ideas about the things that you mentioned and work for. I try to not only lead with compassion, but with curiosity.
Right.
Why do you feel that way? And if you continue to probe, you eventually get to the fear that underlines those reactionary, hard black and white stances.
Exactly.
There's usually fear. And when you can unpack their fear, you can love the human being. You don't have to love the opinion. But when you get to the underlying fear, my heart softens for them. I don't want to instantaneously reject them as not agreeing with me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a lovely conversation with, a friend yesterday, and we were discussing sort of the way to go about, legislation change, and she works directly in policy systems. And it's really interesting to hear her discuss these conversations. She goes, I'm not going to change everybody's mind. 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to change anybody's mind. And, that's not necessarily the goal, because in order to understand how we can change and create a sort of a more welcoming future, you have to understand how the past has been created and how people have been, either trapped or have been, confined to this bubble of the past. And I think that's really important because, especially in activism, it can be very easy to lose sight of the past and the present and sort of immediately look towards the future. I think the future is important, but I don't think it's necessarily the only part of it.
Exactly.
So I think, especially with having these conversations on how you present yourself and how you really find confidence within your heart to discuss your passions, while also adding that with active listening.
Yes.
I think is huge.
Yes. There's 2 parts to that you've just clearly defined. The is opening your heart to listen empathetically, to listen actively, and then to have the courage in your body, in your muscle memory of how the body responds when it is being courageous and not dictated to or not controlled by our limbic brain, by that part of our brain that is motivated by fear.
Right, right. You mentioned sort of like that muscle memory. Could you just sort of expand on that for our listeners who don't know? Obviously, it's a very big topic, but
Absolutely. Confidence, just the thing about confidence, it operates on two levels. It operates in my limbic brain and in my heart. And so I can quake with fear from the emotional aspect of lack of confidence, right? And I go to a therapist to help me deal with those issues.
Right.
When I go to a voice coach and say, help me appear more confident, I talk about what does the confident body look like?
Right.
Let's put our body in that position.
Right.
What does the confident breath feel like? And we learn to breathe in that way.
Right.
And so we relearn the difference between the scared body and the confident body.
Right.
And I can control my body.
Right.
I can make it stand up straighter. I can breathe more deeply before I go into the situation that causes me fear.
Right.
If my body looks confident, my emotions will follow.
Right. Right.
And so that's the process that I teach. It's not the only way at it. You can gain confidence by a lot of months on the therapy couch.
Right.
Right? Or a few sessions of practicing confidence in the body and in the breath. And in other aspects, of course, as well. You train your body, you put your body in that position, and you begin to feel the truth.
Right. Right. I think that's so important. You're discussing sort of like the orientation of the body, you know, like a sort of a stacked spine, the circular breathing.
Yes.
But not a chest that's too pulled forward. It's, you know, everything's sort of in alignment.
Yes.
And I think it's a relaxed position, but also a very forward placement. Like, I think when you think forward placement, sometimes it gets mixed with sort of like a puffed chest and almost like an Angry Bird type of feeling. But rather than having a puffed chest, sort of like open like chest, stacked spine, and sort of like this space that you're like basically pushing your heart forward and sort of
love that.
Sort of being open to having whatever lessons your heart your heart is going to accept, you know?
Exactly. I talk about that by using the terms bluff, denial, and grounded, right? Those are the two default modes are bluff, which is the puffed up chest, the shoulders are back, the chin is up, and I'm doing that right now. And you can hear that my voice is harder.
Yes.
Right? No one wants to listen to that voice for very long. When I bring my shoulders forward and I go into what I call denial, which says, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm really scared to say this. And you can tell my shoulders have come forward. My center is kind of caved in on itself and my voice gets thin. When I go into what I call grounded or neutral, I have the stacked spine, the relaxed shoulders, and the deep breathing. And my voice, this is my authentic sound. Right. And it's the kind of sound that invites people in rather than pushing them away. Right.
I think the physicality of it is so fascinating. I could go on about that for hours, with my anthropology background. But I kind of want to shift to the next question, which sort of goes into this sort of confidence and this physicality almost. So Vocal Authority's motto of sorts is, we help people find their authentic voice. What does authenticity mean to you, and why did you choose that word specifically?
Well, I chose it specifically because it's a buzzword right now. Right. Everybody wants to be authentic. Right. And so for me, an authentic voice comes from the heart, comes from the breath, comes from that aligned spine and the shoulders relaxed and down. It's not the denial voice. This is many women that I encounter have accepted this. I don't want to make waves. I want to be known for my work, and so they cave in on themselves and deny their power and their agency. That's an inauthentic voice. the bluff voice that I demonstrated earlier. I'm trying to be strong and confident, but I'm not fooling you and I'm not fooling anybody else, right? That is inauthentic. Right. But when I breathe, when I sit up nice and straight and I open my heart, then I'm speaking in my authentic voice.
Right.
So that's what how I talk about it.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not clearly sitting up straight. It's because my hands are freezing. But, I think I watched your TED Talk a while back when I first learned that you were going to be one of our guests on the podcast. And I was like, oh yeah. And so now I've just been really realizing how I've been taking that physicality to heart in the way that I'm presenting my research or discussing with people at a symposium. And it's really, really fascinating to see, especially you mentioned this, like, the women that you work with. And I think that's so prominent in the way that women sort of diminish themselves.
Absolutely.
And you can see that in the physicality and like the nature of specific marginalized groups feeling like they have no power and no agency or no right to have a seat at the table. And unfortunately, there have been times where that exclusion has been validated because there have been specific ways that women, people of color, have been excluded from the conversation. But
absolutely.
I think in the present times, a lot of people are trying to take that back and create seats, and people with privilege are trying to create seats for those who do not have it.
Yes, there has been a sea change in that. It's not as wide a sea change as we're hoping for and we're working for, but there are many more opportunities now than there were even a decade ago. For underserved people or people who have been typically marginalized to be invited to the table, to be mentored in how to share their truth in a way that changes hearts and minds and influences outcomes.
Right. Well, I think it's so fascinating to, hear. Obviously, things have changed over the time, but I always like to ask my guests how they have used their privilege or their experiences of being disadvantaged to sort of create this seat at the table or, facilitate a space for welcoming. You've discussed the work that you do and how, this physicality of confidence and, just the relaxed shoulders and everything is so important. I think that obviously very much adds to this, like, confidence in creating the table. But have there been moments where you've been like, how can I, use what I have gained as a privilege to, open doors for people who are underserved?
That's a really great question. I am white, so I am privileged in that way. I am educated, which also gives me an edge, a privilege. I am a woman, which typically has not been the privileged gender. So I kind of straddle that line. I don't ever say that I know how, say, a Black woman who was perhaps raised in poverty, as many are, I don't ever presume to know what their experience has been like. I want to listen. I want to be curious. I want to open my heart to their experiences. But how I have moved from being on outside of the circle, where I started. And if you can picture the boardroom, I was someone sitting on the chairs outside of the table, right? And that's kind of metaphoric of how I saw myself. I am a servant. I am here to make the people around the table make their lives easier, right? And when I decided I wanted to change that, I did it in little assertive ways that didn't rock the boat, because at that point I was still into not rocking the boat, but how to get myself from the back row to the front row. And when I am working with clients who have that same goal, we role play and practice, right? What do I need to say? What is it that I want? And if it's that I want and deserve a seat at the table, we write that script. Now, I don't make them memorize it, but we go through the mental steps of what do you contribute? What are your assets? Why do you deserve a seat at the table? And what will you do when you get there?
Right.
And then we practice that because there's a big old disconnect between, yes, I know I'm going to do that. And then you're faced with the reality of actually having to do it.
Right.
And if you haven't practiced a lot, the pressure of the moment seizes you up and shuts you down.
Right.
So if we practice, even if it's awkward, practice is always awkward and self-conscious. That's why people don't want to do it.
Right.
It's like, okay, yeah, I made my notes. I'll just get up and do it and it'll be fine. Well, no, it won't be fine.
Right. Right.
You know, you have to practice.
Right.
And so I help people in a really nitty-gritty way. This is what you want. These are steps that will help you get what you want. A situation comes to mind, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about this because it was a real significant in my work with women politicians. I had a city council woman from a region around here who called me and said, we are having a very contentious issue and we have a town hall tonight and I know it's going to be bad. What do I do? So I thought about what is the best concrete advice I can give her. So I went through the whole evening role-playing. When the people enter the room, welcome them, greet them, treat them as friends, not as adversaries. Set up an environment where we're going to have a civil discussion about an issue that is important to all of us.
Right.
And in a non-punitive way, set out the guidelines of how this can happen.
Right.
And that we're so glad you are here tonight. We are so glad to hear your concerns.
Right.
And we want to, and so I went through how the whole event could be structured in a compassionate, open way, and to keep breathing, right? The person conducting the meeting needs to stay on breath. And when you feel yourself being triggered, you go back to that deep breath.
Right.
And so she reported back that the meeting went very, very well. And she did it as we had rehearsed.
Right.
And so she was able to subvert what was going to be one of those horrible, contentious city hall meetings, turned into something that became fruitful and helpful for all parties.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is sort of the entire, it's incredibly necessary in the conversation of politics. And also, I find myself trying to use that work because the topics that I discuss and my personal opinions I get very entranced by emotion. And I don't think necessarily,
I do too.
I am a very, very emotional person. I get very passionate. Anybody who knows me knows that I can talk for hours on end when you get me started. And so I have been speaking to a bunch of different people on how to, at first I was like, how do I suppress that emotion to effectively work forward? But I don't know if you agree with this, but I'm of the opinion that I don't necessarily think that emotion is a negative thing. It is just the way that we use it to have these conversations. Because especially as women, our emotions often get delegated to, oh, you're crazy.
Or you're too emotional. You can't do the job.
Exactly. But I think everybody has emotions.
Absolutely.
And to ascribe them to a certain stereotype is quite blasphemous.
Yeah, absolutely. And emotion is an asset, not a negative.
Right.
Sharing emotion is sharing vulnerability.
Right.
And sharing vulnerability is the way forward.
Right.
Right? If I can meet my vulnerable self with your vulnerable self, we are going to find a way to understand each other.
Right.
When I'm talking to my speaker clients and they say, I can't do it that way, it will choke me up. And I'm like, yes, that is speaker gold.
Right.
Now, what is not speaker gold is when you lose control of the emotion.
Right.
And we have techniques for going to the emotion and then controlling it, moving through it so that it doesn't take charge.
Right.
My default as a speaker in the political world is that I get righteously indignant. And I'm really amazing with my righteous indignation.
Right.
But it never accomplishes anything, right? So we have to channel the righteous indignation in another direction.
Right.
I don't have to stifle it. I don't have to deny it. I just have to breathe with it and keep open to the person I'm talking to, right? And it's like I don't suppress righteous indignation or emotion. I channel it so that it is more useful to me.
Right. I also work within the realm of human rights, and with the, complications of human rights and how many horrible things happen around the world.
Yes.
Also within our own country, it can be very easy to deny yourself those emotions because you're like, well, I have to stay on track. I have to be efficient in my conversations. I have to be logical and rational. But nothing about it is rational when you're coming to people being mistreated and these horrible things happening. Nothing about it is logical.
Nothing about it is logical.
And also, I think having those emotions is what really connects people.
Yes.
Like that emotion, it shows that you care about something. If you didn't have those emotions and you just spoke very blindly
or
and
dispassionately.
Exactly. About, horrible things, it would come off as very, standoffish or, just cold. Even though you might care actually a lot. But I think emotion is so important in that. I guess through your work and through this conversation, understanding that like emotion is not a bad thing.
Emotion is not a bad thing. Understand, let's go back to human rights. Let's talk about that for a minute. There is a process that activated people need to go through.
Right.
Each time we encounter the thing that sets us off,
right,
we need to feel that anger. We need to feel that empathy. We need to feel the pain.
Right.
And then we need to breathe and formulate how we are going to respond. What is the best way to respond?
Right.
Is it to sign a petition? Is it to call? Is it to write an email? Is it to send money? Is it to go to a meeting? Is it to speak out in a public forum?
Right.
Whatever the plan is, then you start the deep breathing, you start the strategizing, and you channel your initial emotional response into the rational, this is the way to make a difference now.
Right.
We can't say, oh my God, I have to change the world.
Right.
Because we can't. That is my impulse often. And
Right.
then I recognize the enormity of the task, and I just want to pull the covers back
Right.
over my head
Yes.
and ignore the whole thing.
Yes.
But if every one of us can do the thing that we can do and present a unified front against the forces of hate, of evil, of lack of compassion, of privilege, of whatever is nurturing that injustice, whatever any of us can do is what we need to be doing.
Right.
And when we need to take a break from our activism, we need to take a break.
Right.
Yeah, and I often do. It's
Right.
like, wow, I just laid it all out. I've knocked too many doors.
Right.
I just need to relax and recover.
Right.
And then I can go back
Right.
to the good fight
Right.
and make the good trouble.
Right. I think that's so important. That's a lesson that I've been trying to teach myself and really force myself to do, is to take time away
Yes.
from it, because oftentimes it feels so all encompassing.
Yes.
And so
And there's someone dying every minute and I need to be
Right.
on the front lines all the time.
exactly. And it is, or it seems so immediate, because a lot of the stuff that's going on, particularly in America, does affect people that we love and people that we know other people love. And it's so hard to step away from that and not feel guilty
Yes.
and not feel like I am indulging in something that somebody else does not have,
right.
which is going to be true at times because we all have different levels of access, but also you can't keep going on if
Yeah.
you are not at the full capacity of yourself.
Absolutely.
So-
Self-care. I mean,
Right.
that's such an overused buzzword now.
Right, yes.
But it is, in fact, hugely important for those of us who want to change the world. We have to take care of ourselves and our own energy level and our own sanity and our families.
Right.
Right? There are things that need to be attended to, and self-care has to be at the top of the list before we can change the world, before we can even help our neighbors who are in distress. We need to make sure that we are whole.
Right. I think the word self-care is so interesting. Obviously, you've said that it's been co-opted by numerous things. But I really think about, I'll give an example of I was a health educator in college, and I helped students get healthcare access on campus. And my teacher, my professor that was, teaching us all about the proper ways to help care for our fellow students, he was discussing the difference between self-soothing and self-care. And he goes, self-care is not always easy. Self-care is not always, getting yourself a bar of chocolate and watching your favorite movie. It can be, but he said it is doing the work to making sure that you are providing for yourself in a way that's nurturing and kind. And sometimes that involves going to therapy, where those therapy sessions can be incredibly hard and you're unpacking very intense things, but you're doing it in a space that will help you grow and better heal yourself.
Right.
And I think that is the definition of self-care that I try to lead with, because oftentimes my self-care is really hard and it can be very, very, distressing in that moment because it's something that I don't want to deal with.
Right. When you're in that fervor, you don't want to step back from that energy and say, wow, I need a break.
Right.
Right. We don't want to do that.
Right.
Self-care, self-nurturing, self-comforting. When I'm in the thick of the battle, that is hard to do.
Right. Right.
And not everything we love is good for us all the time.
Right. Yeah. I think also, finding moments of triggers can be very, very interesting, especially in all these politics. It's just because acknowledging those triggers can be incredibly hard. You don't want to admit that there's something that, really set you off and, might take you out for a day or two. 'Cause that's hard. If you're like, oh, I have so much work to do, I can't afford to be taken out for, God knows how long. But I think allowing yourself that space is honestly the most healing thing you can do.
Absolutely.
Because if you aren't going to acknowledge that process of damage is going to continue further. And you don't know how that'll impact you further on, impact the work that you do.
Exactly.
Right? So,
and sometimes that time out is not even a day. I can take 20 minutes and do some self-care that will ground and center me. I often wake up in the mornings with a huge dose of anxiety and weight about all that I want to do in the day. And so I have to start that process of making myself get out of bed, doing my morning ritual of yoga, of deep breathing, of eating a healthy breakfast, doing those things that I know will fortify me for the day.
Right.
Now, I could just jump into my day and frantically try to accomplish all that I want to do. But if I take the time to ground and center, to be healthy, to be whole myself, then I have much more to give and am twice as effective through the day as I would have been had I not taken time for self-care in the morning.
Right. I also think, I find that productivity can be a really interesting concept, especially as a grad student. You want to get as much as as much as you can. You want to make your mark as fast as you can because you don't have much time.
Yeah.
And what I've sort of realized is that it's okay to not get everything done on your to-do list.
Absolutely. Now, conversely, you need to get some things done on your to-do list.
Obviously.
But no, I agree. I'm so productive driven.
Right.
And the day has to be productive to have been a good day.
Right.
And I'm trying to work with that thought that that's not always the case.
Right.
Sometimes a wonderful day can be just relaxing or checking in with friends or doing the things that make me feel good about myself and about my place in the world and not have to check everything off of my to-do list every day.
Right. It's so interesting. Yesterday I went to a concert in Tulsa and it was incredible. It was a great concert, but I haven't been to one in a really long time, at least during the school year. And I felt kind of guilty about that, that I could be doing readings. I could be doing more thesis work. I could be, applying to jobs. I could be doing whatever.
Right.
But I said, no, I need this. This is something I've been waiting for months. And I deserve to have a good time, even if it's just me enjoying this music by myself. I deserve to indulge in things, not even indulge, experience things that bring me joy. Because if I don't have that joy, the enormity of hate that I can become surrounded with, either from my own self or the stuff that I read or stuff that I learn about, can be sort of like all encompassing.
Right.
It can really fill your world into like dread. And I had a moment earlier in the year before spring break where I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this anymore, because it's just so much. It feels so like heavy.
Yes.
Heavy, and your heart hurts, like your chest hurts.
I know that
and
feeling.
your shoulders hurt, and you're like, I can only do so much. But it sucks that there are other people who do not understand, but there are some ways in which things are not being collectively looked at for like the betterment of the community,
right,
rather than the betterment of the individual. Do you know what I'm saying? So a lot of people will, especially in capitalism, sort of look at how they can benefit themselves individually. And I think that's very important, take care of yourself and do what you have to do. But oftentimes that becomes at the detriment of communities.
Right.
So I think that part was so entirely like hard to face.
Yes.
And just like be like, oh my God, there's so many people who I know that are benefiting off of the marginalization of others, and how do I fix this? And then I just had to take a moment. I need to stop, because if I go down that rabbit hole, I'm never going to get out.
That's right.
And I think self-care and also doing the work to really try to heal myself of, why do I think this way? Why am I feeling particularly, triggered or upset by this certain thing, even if it has nothing to do with me, completely separate. Like understanding that, and also allowing myself to forgive myself.
Beautiful. Yeah, exactly. When I well up with anxiety or overwhelm that you described is overwhelm, I try to back off, take a step back and evaluate, why am I feeling overwhelmed? Why am I feeling so heavy? Why am I feeling desperate? And I just keep questioning, why? What is this about? And a lot of times I will journal it, because writing it out is extremely helpful and clarifying. And then in the next thought, my pen starts writing even before my brain is aware, and it will give me the answer.
Right.
And once I see it or say it out loud, I see it written or say it out loud, then I can begin to gain perspective.
Right.
And when I gain perspective, I am going to be more useful than if I dash out in my overwhelmed state, right, and try to get something done. Right. Backing away, taking whatever time I need to get grounded and centered and sure of my mission now.
Right.
I can't carry the mission, I'm going to change the world, with me into battle every day, because we can't do it. That's futile. And it will only lead to burnout and disappointment.
Right.
But if it's today, I can do this.
Right.
I can make this a little better for this person today.
Right.
And that's all I can do.
Right. Right. I think conversations around hope are really interesting here too, because specifically in the reproductive justice movement, it's really hard to have hope.
I know.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's so dismal right now.
It's so dismal. It feels so many losses and very little wins. And the wins you do have come with complications, with footnotes.
Yes.
And I think it's really interesting to hear people. I asked yesterday with with a friend, and I said, what hope do you have? She works in it. And she said, I don't know if I have hope right now, but I know I'll have hope in the future. And I guess it's the hope for that hope, and she goes, I guess that's what I'm going to continue with. Because if I didn't have hope and I didn't have faith in my community and my people, then I don't think I would be continuing the work that I do. And I think that's so important, like having faith and hope in those connections, because things can become so divisive and it can be a complete separation between people. But when you actually understand the nature of the community that you live in and what's actually needed now, rather than some big wig thing up in the sky,
right,
then you really understand like how to connect with others.
And it's like one person at a time gives me hope.
Right.
You know, I look at the world and I go, oh God, there is no hope. But when I have a client who walks in and she says to me, I have to quit my job. I have to speak in public and it makes me ill.
Right.
And I can help her, give her skills. She goes back to her work and her work discovers that she is now the best speaker on the team.
Right.
That gives me hope. I have empowered one woman to make a difference in her world.
Right.
That's hopeful.
Right.
When a woman comes to you in reproductive health care and you are able to help her in some way and send her out with a bit of hope for her life, there is hope in one gesture at a time.
Right. Right. I think it's also the validation of dignity and this validation of humanness.
Yes.
Huge.
Yes.
And that's a huge part of human rights as well. And seeing now with legislation being passed that effectively does not recognize a lot of people's dignity and recognize a lot of people's humanness. It's so interesting to see ways communities are actively combating that by recognizing each other's humanity and recognizing each other's dignity. And I think that is just like the biggest part of it.
Huge. It is huge.
Yeah.
And we all encounter hundreds of people through our day.
Right.
And if every interaction we have, if the focus is, I want to honor your humanness, that's hugely, hugely important. I see you as the soul that you are, not as the thing that you present that makes me fear.
Right.
Right? You are a human being. And I try, I'm not always successful, but I try to treat the soul rather than the bad behavior. Behind every bad behavior is a human soul that fears.
Right.
And if I can, in my mind, treat that soul and interact with the human soul and not the bad behavior, I have taken, well, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a strong thing. And it's a good way to lead through the world. Right. And I have to monitor and check myself. We all do. Those of us in privilege have to check ourselves constantly when we interact.
Right.
What am I responding to here?
Right.
What scares me? You know, that feeling of someone different walks by or walks into the room and you feel your hackles go up.
Right.
You go, wait a minute. Why am I reacting that way? That's a human being.
Right.
And when I check myself in that way, then I can interact with the human being, the soul of the human being, and not the thing that causes my programming to be afraid.
Right. And I think that's so interesting to sort of also with people understanding implicit bias. And I used to be a diversity, equity, and inclusion educator. And having these discussions of implicit bias and how people, say, I'm not racist, I'm not sexist. And so, no, I understand that. But we all have biases.
Yes.
And it is not exclusive to these, categories which were put in place to marginalize people.
Right.
I
think of the line from the musical Avenue Q. Everyone's a little bit racist.
Yes.
It's true. And of course, I initially, as I began this work, well, I'm not racist. Truly, I felt that I was not. And in the big picture, no, I'm not. But in the little ways, in my heart, I have been taught to fear differences.
Right.
It's in our primitive brain. That's how we as primitive people protected ourselves. That's a different person. Am I in danger? Right? We don't need to do that anymore. We don't need to do that. We can reframe and go, okay, I had an instinctive reaction.
Right.
That's not the true reaction.
Right.
Look at the soul of this person and not at the physical differences that initially scare me, because that fear was placed in me as a child.
Right.
And is no longer real.
Right. I think that's just, I mean, I can't wait to put this podcast out and have everybody listen to it, because I think you really explain these topics so effectively in a way that, you know, you're echoing everything that I have in my little brain.
Well, I've given these subjects a lot of thought.
Right.
And I've done a lot of writing around them, and I do a lot of coaching around them. I coach people like yourself who are as passionate as you, but are not as articulate, are not as used to putting into words what they think and feel.
Right.
And working with them gives me an opportunity to put into words some of these things and to understand how I feel. And I have to be clear on my implicit biases before I can help someone else be clear on theirs.
Right.
If I am ignoring or not acting on my implicit bias or not managing them, they control me because they're placed so deeply in my fear system.
Right. Yeah. I think that's incredible. I'm going to go towards our last question.
All right.
I didn't really need to ask any questions this episode because we just kept having a great conversation. So
that's the best kind of conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
It just happens organically.
I agree. My last question is, how do you instill positivity in your clients in order for them to understand that their voice matters and that confidence in themselves is key?
I tell them that. I tell them that over and over and over. People love to hear encouraging words.
Right.
There is no one who comes into my studio and leaves feeling badly.
Right.
Right? It's about empowering and make them feel good about who they are and what they have to offer. I had one woman come in. She is a woman who has a very influential position, but doesn't want to use it.
Right.
And I felt it was my job to encourage her to use her platform.
Right.
Right? Have the courage to use the platform you have been given.
Right.
To talk to people clearly about the things that matter to you.
Right.
And that you are in a position to make the community better.
Right.
And here, let me energize you and help you and give you the confidence and the words to use to influence people.
Right. Right. I think that's so important. I had a very similar experience where, you know, I've been trying to grapple with, like, does my word have worth? And, you know, thinking about all of that and, like, what, you know, in your graduate seminars, you always have a question of, like, how can you contribute to the field of anthropology, yada, yada, yada. And, you know, I went to a reproductive summit in Tulsa, and hearing directly from people, even though I'm not in an organization that does it directly, even though I'm just reading the books and I'm writing my master's thesis on it, they were like, keep going.
Yes.
Like, keep going. Because if you stop, all of the thoughts that may positively contribute to the movement and may have not been expressed previously could be something revolutionary.
Right. You are the repository of a great deal of information through your study, your research, your reading, and your writing. And it is your responsibility to share that knowledge with whoever will listen, whatever part of it they will listen to.
Right. I also think, as an active listener, it's also my responsibility to be a listener in these spaces.
Absolutely.
Because so many people have been not listened to, and there have been people who have called themselves listeners, but they're actually just recorders.
Yes.
Or co-opters of knowledge.
Yes.
And I think me taking a step back to be a listener and actively listen, I think that is huge, and not a lot of people do that nowadays, where active listening is not really used. But when active listening comes into play, you require empathy and understanding and honesty. If somebody wants you to respond, you know, respond honestly if that's what they need, you know? So I think that's huge. And I think overall, this conversation's been great.
Thank
I love
you.
talking to you.
Oh, I've enjoyed talking to you. You are just delightful. You have such a spark.
Thank you. I feel like we went all over the place. We sort of like looped-de-looped all
Yeah,
over the
we
conversation,
did.
but it's okay. I feel like that's totally fine. But thank you so much for coming.
Oh, it's been my
Yeah.
pleasure. Thank you so
Can't wait
much,
for the
Veda.
podcast episode to come out and everybody to hear your lovely words.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Thick Descriptions Elephant in the Room Unboxed. Want to learn more about us, what we're doing to disrupt traditional educational methods? Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, thickdescriptions.org, 405-397-0584.